All right. So for number 1, do you see this number line here with T and U? Okay, so it says which expression correctly finds the distance between the 2 points. Okay, so um, what value does each of these 2 points have? What is T? What's the value for T? If you look at T, what number is next to it? 15, right? And what about U? What number is next to U? -10. Perfect. Okay. So when you are subtracting, you want to do your bigger number minus your smaller number. Okay. So which one of those numbers is bigger, 15 or -10? 15, right? So I want to have 15 minus, and then I have to have a -10. So when you're finding the distance, you're always going to be subtracting, okay? But if you have a negative number like this -10, don't forget about the negative sign here. Okay, so this is one option, and then if I put these in absolute value, I can hit absolute value. So I do 15 minus -10, and it tells me it should be +25. So let's see. This one right here is one of them. So 15 minus -10 equals 25. So now that I know that the distance between these 2 points is 25, how many answer choices do I automatically know are wrong? Because I know the distance between those 2 points is 25. So how many of them can I automatically say, well, it can't be those because the distance is wrong? The third, fourth one, and the last one. Perfect, right? The third, fourth one, and the last one automatically wrong because it's telling me that the distance is 5, but I know it's 25. So now all that we need to do is check those other 2 options to see if we actually get 25 when we're subtracting. However, if I look at this answer choice right here, I'm adding. And when you're finding distance, you should always do subtraction, not addition. So because this answer choice has addition, this one can't be it. Which means if I double check this top one, the -10 minus 15 in my calculator, and I do this, it tells me it's 25. That means this first one and the second one are the 2 correct answers here. Okay. And then let's go to number 2. These ones kind of look like the workbook questions. It says that Francine used the following number line to calculate the distance between J and K. All right. And she began at point K and counted spaces on the number line until she reached J. She counted 5 total spaces. Each space represents a distance of 1/4. So she concluded that the distance between points J and K is 1 1/4. Part A wants to know what mistake did Francine make? Okay, well, if I look at this number line here, I'm going back 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. How many spaces did it say that Francine counted? It's 4 spaces, not 5. Perfect. So the mistake is that it should be, where is it? Francine miscounted the number of spaces, this one. So Francine miscounted the number of spaces. There are 4 total spaces from J to K. That one, just like you said. And then B is asking us what's the correct distance between J and K, right? So if there's actually 4 spaces and each space represents 1/4, what would be the actual distance between those two numbers or those two letters? 1, perfect. Yep. So B should be 1. And then for A, we should have that Francine miscounted because there should be 4 spaces. All right. Let's see. 3 we got correct. So let's skip that and go on to number 4. All right. So here we have another number line, and we want to know which expression correctly finds the distance between point G and H. So when you're finding distance and you're picking an expression like it's asking you to do here, there's a few things that you can check for that will probably knock a few answers off immediately. The first thing is that you should always have absolute value signs. So knowing that, how many answers can I automatically say are wrong because they don't have absolute value signs? The first and the second one. Well, this first one has absolute value signs, right? But the second one doesn't, so that's right. This third one down here also doesn't have absolute value signs. So these two should, we can cross off right away. The second thing to, there you go. The second thing to always make sure is that your distance is always positive, which means that your final answer should be a positive number. And if I look at this first one, that answer is positive, and same thing with the bottom. That one's also positive. So those two are still up in the air, which means these two center ones I can automatically cross off. Also, these answers are both negative, so that tells me that it can't be those two. Now, I have these two numbers. So I have a negative 0.8 and I have a negative 3.2. So when I'm subtracting these, okay, if I have negative 0.8, right, I'm subtracting and I have a negative 3.2. So I need to have another negative sign like this. Okay, so net minus negative 3.2. Don't forget this double negative, okay? It happens a decent amount. And if we look here, this answer choice down here at the bottom, it's missing this negative right here. So this expression is not set up it correctly, which means it should be this top one here that tells me it's equal to 2.4. And if we want to double check it, we can as well, which is 2.4. All right, number 5. Okay. We have another number line, and he wants to calculate the distance between point A and point B. He writes down the following. So he says that we have A minus B, and A is negative 1.2 and B is 0.3. So he has negative 1.2 minus 0.3. That looks good. He set it up correctly. And it says it's equal to negative 1.5. Well, we just talked about on the last problem. What's he missing from here? Because distance should always be positive. So what's he missing to make his answer positive? The absolute value, right? So his solution is not correct. His solution is incorrect. And let's see. So we're looking at this one, and this one. Perfect. Yep, those absolute value signs. He correctly set up his equation. He did not correctly set up his equation, right? Because he forgot the absolute value signs. That's a part of it. He needs to take the absolute value of his calculation to find the correct distance. So this one right here, he's missing those absolute value signs. And then for part B, we want to know what is the distance between those 2 points. Well, if we calculated it, it was negative 1.2 minus 0.3. Should be positive 1.5. We should have positive 1.5 and then A. This answer for A should be a positive 1.5. Remember, distance should always be positive. So anytime a question's asking you what's the distance, never pick a negative answer. It should always be positive. All right. Next one, number 6. So here we have yet another number line. I think unit 3 is literally just number lines. It says that the average temperature in Bar Harbor changes from Saturday to Sunday. The following number line represents the temperatures. Okay. Well, that's cold. Negative 1.2 degrees. Dang. All right. We want to know which answer correctly describes how to calculate the distance between Saturday and Sunday. Well, our answer should be what? Positive or negative for our distance between the two? Should be a positive change. Sorry, should be positive distance or negative. Remember, distance is always what? If we're using absolute value signs always, it should always be positive, right? So any of these answer choices that have a negative number, I'm going to cross off right away, which it looks like this first one's the only one that says it is a negative number. Okay. And we have Saturday and Sunday. So what was the temperature for Saturday? Negative 1.2, perfect. And what was the temperature for Sunday? Negative 4.8, beautiful. Okay, so when I set up my subtraction, what would go inside my parentheses here? What would I want to do with my subtraction? If I'm trying to find the distance between these two numbers, what would that look like in here? Beautiful. Negative 1.2 minus negative 4.8. And so if I were to type that into a Desmos calculator to figure out what is the actual distance between those two, it tells me that I should have a distance of 3.6. So if I look through my answer choices here, this says 6 degrees, 3.6, 3.6, and 6. So, whoops, I'm looking at these two answer choices here, both the ones with the 3.6, because that's the distance. Let's look and see which expression is written correctly. So which one of these expressions is written correctly, the top one or the bottom one? The third one, right? Perfect. So this one right here with those negative signs is the one that we want to pick. The Pelican one? I don't think so. I don't remember that one. I don't think we've gotten to that one yet. Tyler, are you good to go on to 7? Okay. Also, I don't think you guys know this, but when you go to the conferences tab, so like say you're in here and you got one of the questions wrong and you're like, we went over that but I don't remember what it was. If you look at any of these on the bottom, like you were all invited to this Math 7B course recording, if you click this, you'll be able to see the entire recording. So like here, if you missed a question and wanted to go back and look or like rewatch it, you can click the recording to watch it all. I don't know. I don't think anyone knows that, but you have that option. Okay. 7. See, match the absolute value expression to its correct verbal explanation and simplification. Okay. We have negative 8 minus 1. The distance between negative 8 and 1, which is 9. That one's correct. This one's correct. All right, this next one. So if I have a minus b in these absolute value signs, right? Because I'm always subtracting. My first number here, if I were to have 8 minus negative 1, Is this 8 a positive or a negative? Positive, right? So for this one, I would have the distance between 8 and what is B? What's my second number? Is it a positive one or is it a negative one? A negative one, right? So distance between 8 and negative 1. And if you were to subtract those, you get positive 9, which the distance between them is positive 9. So remember that this minus sign for that third one, it doesn't change whether or not this 8 is positive or negative, because up here we have to have a minus sign after the negative for it to be a negative number. So on this last one, if I have 1 minus 8, I'm finding the distance between what two numbers? 1 and 8, perfect, which is 7. The which is 7 is correct. So between 1 and 8, which is 7. So all of them? What do you mean? What do you mean? The first one, this first one right here, this first one is correct. For this second one here, you want to have the distance between 8 and negative 1, which is 9. And then for this bottom one here, you'd want to have the distance between 1 and 8, which is 7. Let's see. So this one kind of looks semi-similar to what we just did. It gives us this expression, and we want to know the expression represents the distance between what two numbers. So I think that one you actually have correct. So for this is number 8. On number 8, leave A the same. That one's correct. For 8, A. And it looks like all we have to do is figure out what the actual distance between the two is. So I know my distance has to be positive, right? So that means that this answer and this answer are automatically wrong. And let's type those in. I think I need to write that down because I won't remember that. 1 and 2 ninths minus 8 and 4 ninths. So to do mixed numbers, put a space after the 1 to do the 2 over 9. Then we are subtracting 8. I'm going to do another space, 4 over 9. And it tells me that this is 9.6 repeating, which is the same as 9 and 2/3. But if you look here, there's only one answer choice that has a positive 9. So it should be this positive 9. And it has 6 over 9, but that simplifies to 2/3. So I don't know why they'd leave it that way, but that's okay. So A is correct on this one. And then for B, we want that 9 and 6 ninths. Right, number 9. Checkpoints all have 15 questions now. It's a lot. All right. Says that I think it's Di or Day. I think it's Di. Di rides his bike 7 miles from home. from home to work. On his way, he rides by a park and suddenly realizes he dropped his wallet during his ride. He turns around and bikes towards his house. He finds his wallet in front of the gas station. Dai's ride is represented on the following number line. Okay, so his gas station is 2 miles and park is 5 miles. I'm assuming that his house is 0, right? Because if you're starting at your house, that's 0. Which expression correctly describes the distance in miles between the park and the gas station? Okay, well, if the park is here and the gas station is here, what's the distance between those 2 points? If the gas station's at 2 miles and the park is at 5 miles. 3 miles, right? So for A, I want to pick one that has 3 miles. And if I look here, all the ones for A have different answers, except for this one, which you chose, which is 3. So that's perfect. B says, which expression correctly describes the distance in miles Dai has to ride from his gas station to work? And it says he rides his bike 7 miles from home to work. Okay, so that means because this question says that he rides his bike 7 miles from home to work, that means I need a little bit more. 7. Home is 0, right? This is his home. And his work is 7 miles away. So his work is 7 miles away. And the gas station was 2 miles from his house. So if I'm going from his gas station to work, if I'm going from 2 to 7, what is the distance between the gas station and Dai's work? 5, right? 5. So we want to pick the one that has the positive 5. That one was a little bit tricky because you had to read the question carefully. And you couldn't just use the number line. You had to like actually read it. 5 miles, perfect. Yep. All right. Look at 10. Oh, on this question, when I looked at it, I actually did this one wrong the first time because I didn't read everything I was supposed to. So at number 10, we want to know what's the difference in elevation in city number 2 and city number 4. City number 2 says that it is 42 feet below sea level. And so, Isaac, that's what I did the first time. And I was really confused, and I had to actually ask another teacher as to why the answer was correct. And then they pointed it out to me, and I was like, oh, I'm just a dingus and didn't read the whole problem. City 4 is 49 feet above sea level. Okay. So if city 2 is 42 feet below sea level, is that a positive or a negative 42? If it's 42 feet below sea level, is that a positive or a negative 42? It's negative, exactly. And that's why I messed it up the first time. So Tyler, what just happened is when I read the problem, Isaac said he put 7 because he took this 49 and went 49 minus 42 is 7, so it's 7 feet. The reason why it's not 7, hopefully, is it better now? Say negative 42. Perfect. Exactly. Because since this 42 is below sea level, it's negative 42. This 49 feet is above sea level, so this should be a positive 49. So when we go to subtract these two, I have 49 minus negative 42. So 49 minus negative 42, which tells me that it is 91. So, Tyler, remember that These are the two numbers that we're finding the distance between, 49 and 42. And remember, you're always subtracting, so I'd have 49 minus a negative, don't forget that negative 42, which is why it gives you that positive 91. So on this one, I think Isaac and I made the same mistake. We just looked at the numbers. So I looked at 49 and I looked at 42 and I subtracted them and I was like 7. But we were both wrong because we didn't read the whole problem. This is set 42 feet below sea level, which is what makes it a negative 42. I was like freaking out because I'm like, I don't understand how it's 7. Like, how is it 7? Where are they getting this 91? And then the other teacher was like, well, it's below sea level, so it's a negative. And I was like, oh, you're right. I'm just a dingus and I don't read. I just look at the numbers. All right, number 11. Oh, this one has 3 blanks? Jeez. Alrighty. Number 11. Okay, so we have this expression. So negative 2 and 2/7 minus 1 and 4/7 represents the distance between blank and blank. Oh, this one's not that bad. And the distance is actually blank. Okay. So what two numbers are we finding the distance between when we look at this problem here? When I have negative 2 and 2/7 minus 1 and 4/7. So blank 1, what's the first number? So blank 1 should be the first number. So the question for blank 1 and blank 2, it's asking us what two numbers are we finding the distance between, right? So remember, it's like when you have your A minus B. So for blank 1, it's the first number. So what's the first number that we have here? Negative 2 and 2/7. Perfect. And then for blank 2, what would be the second number that we're finding the distance between? What's the second number we have here? 1 and 4/7. Beautiful. Yeah. So now the next thing for blank 3, all we have to do is actually find the distance between the 2 points. So I'm just going to type it into a calculator. And again, remember to do the mixed numbers, you just put a space. So I'm going to put a space after 2. I have 2/7. I am subtracting 1. I'm going to put a space, 4/7. And it tells me that it is 3.857. So if I look at my answer choices for 3, I only have 1. 6/7? Is that what 6/7 is? It is. So for blank 3, you had it correct, but it didn't give you any partial credit. I don't know why. That's weird. And it looks like for blank 1 and blank 2, you had the right numbers. You just, for blank 1, you forgot that negative, and for blank 2, it should be the positive one. So I'll give you a second to make sure that you have each of the answers, because this one is a lot to look at. All right. And number 12. Number 12. Brenda is competing in a golf tournament. After the third hole, she is 1 stroke over par on the scoreboard. By the 18th hole, she is 3 strokes under par. Do you guys know what par is in terms of golf? Okay. The following number line represents Brenda's score throughout the round. So on the third hole, she's 1 above par, and then on the 18th hole, she's 3 below. what is the distance between Brenda's score at the 3rd and the 18th hole? So for A, you got it correct. It is 4. There's 4 units in between them, so that one's good. And part B says, which answer correctly describes the relationship between the distance and change? So the distance is positive 4, right? And if you look at her score from her 3rd hole, which is positive 1, and then at the very end, her 18th hole, is her change, is it increasing or decreasing? Is her score going up or is her score going down? What's the change? Is it going up or is it going down? It's going down, right? Which means that the change should be negative. So our distance should be positive and our change should be negative. So change is different than distance. So these ones where it says change is the same, it's not always the same. So don't pick those. Change is the distance is different than distance because she describes whether the golfer's score is increasing or decreasing. This one. In this example, the change is negative while the distance is positive. So remember, change is kind of like whether or not you're going up or going down. And distance is always going to be positive. So sometimes change can be positive as well. But in this particular problem, her score is getting technically better in golf. So her change is decreasing. So it's going down. Make sure that you read this one carefully because I know a lot of these answers look the same. All right, 13. Here's your pelican problem, Isaac. All right, it says that a pelican stands on a dock and sees a fish in the water. It jumps off, swims downward, reaching the fish on a shallow reef. The following number line describes the pelican's change in position in meters. Okay, so here's the platform. And here's sea levels at 0, and the reef is -1 1/3 meters down. So which answer best describes the pelican's position? So it says that he's standing on a dock and sees a fish in the water. Okay. So if he's standing on a dock, I'm assuming that's this platform, right? So he is on this platform that's 1/3 meters above water, and he's diving down to the reef. Okay. So my distance here is going to be 1/3 minus -1 1/3. Chelsea, we're doing checkpoint 3 right now. So if I were to clear all this and type this into my Desmos, 1/3. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. I need a minus sign in between here. There we go. So need another minus sign. There we go. So he went down 1.6 repeating, or 1 2/3. So that was the total change. So positive 1 2/3. But that's wrong. Is the dock? It jumps off and swims downward, reaching the position. That's interesting because I think it's because this. So the question is asking what is the pelican's change in position, not what's the distance between these 2 points. So if he's starting above sea level and then he goes down, his change is decreasing. So we don't need the absolute value signs here because we're figuring out his change, not his distance. So we should have this one, this negative 1 2/3. That's why. So the distance is 1 2/3, and the change is negative 1 2/3. Because the question is asking us, well, how much did he change in meters, not what's the distance. That's why. Isaac, did you choose the one with positive 1 2/3 as well? No. Which one did you pick?